Hello, this is the Bluthner Style 4 grand piano made in 1935. That's 150 centimeters long, and it's just come into stock. I want to compare it with this Bluthner grand piano, which is 166, so a little bit longer centimeters, made in 1975. We don't normally have one of these in stock. This came in part exchange, and so I'm really pleased to be able to give a comparison between the two. Now, just focusing on the word Bluthner here, it's one way of telling that this is a younger one, because you see the letters are all joined at the bottom. So the 1935 Bluthner, as you can see, all the letters are separated. Now, this piano has actually come back into stock after about 10 years. We reconditioned and repolished this piano 10 years ago, and the clients moved on, so we've got the piano back, which is quite common with grand pianos, where we'll get grand pianos back in. And we've French polished it with 30 coats of French polish, as we mentioned many times before on videos, and we're just looking over the case to perfect it again. Now, because we've added some polish to the top, we've actually put the lid like that. We've had to, because otherwise it might stick, as it's got polish on both sides. But you can see here there's no fade line between the front and the back. This is one of the first contrasts I want to make, because this is French polish. If there was slightly faded, where this is what happens, as we've said before, is if this lid is down here, then underneath it's dark, and when you lift this up, the back end is light. Let's have a look at the 1975 one. Now, the 1975 one is a bright shiny finish, so that's on top of the polish. So unlike French polish, it's very, very difficult to redo it. And as you can see, there is a fade line here where this lid's been kept like this. And so that's really impossible to do anything about without taking all the coating on the top of the polish off. The side here is also faded, so cosmetically it's very difficult to do anything about this. This, as I say, coming past exchange, we don't normally have these. So we've been using it as a piano to loan out to clients whose pianos we've got for reconditioning, so they have a piano while we're reconditioning their piano. Now, the 1935 one has perfect set of ivory keys. None of them have come off and been stuck back on. We talked about that before, where there's the line showing here very strongly if one of them's come off and been stuck back on, but all of these are perfect. And the polish is also perfect. This is a very nice flamed mahogany finish, which is typical of the 1930s Bluthners. 1935 Style 4 has been extensively reconditioned, has new tuning pins here, tighter tuning, bigger ones basically, so they're very tight. We often change the rest plank if we're fully restoring a piano, but these are extremely tight and good for another 20 years. Obviously, every piano you have to be careful not to dry out. And as you can see, the piano's perfect, the soundboard is in perfect condition. So the whole piano, cosmetically and technically, is as perfect as you can get. Now, the 166 1975 grand piano has original tuning pins as well. I forgot to mention, actually, it doesn't have ivory keys. So this is obviously a modern kind of plastic key top. But going back to the tuning pins, they're tight, obviously. Now, let's listen to the tone of this piano. So it's got quite a good tone to it, and obviously a longer piano, so the bass is going to be richer on this one. The bass strings, they have a different style to them. If you look at these, you'll see that the style of these, like most modern grands really. We'll have a look at the Bluthner to compare. You can see it's had some damage, it's had some moth as well. So we're not quite sure what to do with this piano. It's at the moment used as a loan piano. So here's the 1935 one. And a shorter bass, so obviously not quite such a powerful bass, but the tone here is just exquisite really, and typical of, for a small grand, it's such a sought after piano because of the mellowness of sound, and very popular. So looking at those strings, those are the typical Bluthner finishing off there. So there is original strings and still got plenty of life in them, as 30s pianos. So if you change the strings, it's got to put a bit more life into them, but you don't get the same authentic sound as you get on this, and especially in the tenor area. And the contrast on the breakpoint is very good. Here's the 1975 one. It's got a deader sound there. Slightly brighter. It varied. That 1935 one. It's much more round, very pleasant sound. Here's a new euphoric grand, obviously brighter. It's one of our preferred makes of new pianos, we've said many times before. So back to the Style 4. So here's the action on the Style 4 1935 piano, and the hammers, since we sold the piano about 10 years ago, not really had much use while it was there. It was in a gallery and played very little, very much a piece of furniture really, and the action is regulated. You see the hammers are above the felt here, which is correct, and there's a nice regulation screw here, which you have the same on Bechstein grands, and as we'll see on the other piano in a minute, it's more difficult to regulate. But the main issue is how the touch feels, and this is slightly lighter than an average touch, so ideal for an occasional player, someone who really likes to, or doesn't play a huge amount, doesn't want the sort of heavy feeling of you get on a lot of modern actions. Now it's on the 1975 one, apart from having to change all the felts because there's lots of moth-eaten on the central rail as well as the front. But the action itself, and my colleague who did most of the action work said that the wood is so problematic, it's splintery. You can see it's actually been filled here. You can see the contrast in the colours here on the wood. Basically, the action is really inferior to the other Bluthner, and Bluthner's had a problem, unfortunately. After the Second World War, their factory was bombed in the war. I understand from reading some of the history of it that Bechstein helped them out quite a lot. You can read that for yourself, I'm sure. This action, by the way, says H. Fleming. I don't know if you've had an experience, if you're a technician, of these actions, but this certainly isn't well made. Even the bushings are varied. Some of them feel sort of sloppy, as though they're going to go loose. There was one loose one that I discovered earlier. We have done quite several days' work on this to get it playing well. I was pleased to get the experience of it, so that in talking about this age of Blüthner Grand, which generally speaking, unfortunately, hugely varied in quality. So we don't buy into stock any Blüthner Grand made after the Second World War, basically up until about 1990 or so, when they seemed to recover a lot, and obviously injection of West German money after the Berlin Wall came down. Don't really know the history of that, but clearly they do improve enormously in the 90s, and they had this patch between the Second World War and this is a 1975 one, and really we don't buy them into stock normally. Just to mention the adjustment here, this is, well, the Steinways have this sort of lever, and it's harder to adjust. We prefer the style which we associate it with the 30s Bluthners and Bechsteins and so on. But these springs have been adjusted, so we've obviously regulated it. But the touch doesn't really, it's all right, but it's not the kind of touch we're looking for, and we try to get the touch as good as we can and weighting the keys evenly. So it's a playable piano. It's been out on loan for a couple of months before it came here, and now it's about to go out tomorrow. So I wanted to get this video done while I could, and just to help you think about the fact that, as I think in the trade, if you can back me up if you want to make any more comments about this age of Blüthner Grand, but I would tend to avoid them, as this one, as I say, had a lot of moth as well. As you can see, we changed the hammer rail felt too, so not only that, but the whole action's been very hard to get right. By the way, you might see the hammer heights varied here too. You wouldn't notice hugely on the touch there, but it's obviously cosmetic. And interesting enough, when we press that down, it's just very hard to regulate as well. So as I say, this sort of piano we often put in auction because surprisingly they fetch quite high prices in auction sometimes, or use it as a loan piano. So going back to the 1935 one, so here's the regulation for the spring, and much prefer that, and you can get really fine adjustment on the spring, and it's really much more controllable. So that's Bluthner style 4 grand piano, just coming back into stock after about 10 years, and we're perfecting it again. Now, these pianos have a lot of fans, very popular because of the mellow tone. Sings so well. Now, if you are wanting to study, it's a bit on the light side. It's not that light, but say about 5 or 10% lighter than a normal modern action, and also very mellow. The action is so fluid and pleasant to play. We sell quite a few of this model. It's a question of getting hold of them, really. That's the difficulty. And then they do usually take a reasonable amount of work to restore. I'm just going to play the other one to give you some idea of the contrast. So here's the 1975, 166 centimetres long, so it has a richer bass, but the action really is not so fluid. We'll try to regulate it as well as we can, and I'm glad we've had the experience of it, because we wouldn't normally do that. We often send them straight to auction, really. But it is useful as a loan piano, and at the moment it's playing reasonably well. It's a heavier action and doesn't quite feel responsive like, say, the new IV does. As you can hear, at the moment it is pleasant to play, and the tone isn't that bad, but it's just the feel of the piano. It's just not really giving what it should do. It's hard to describe a feel on a video, I know, but I know many people buy pianos without coming to look at them, and we really want you to come, because you can't feel the piano. All we can do is tell you what we think and contrast it with others. But compared to the IV 162, for instance, that we played earlier, that has a very responsive feel. So I'll just go back to the style 4 just to finish off with. So the style 4, as I say, we're trying to get as many of these as we can. We demand outstrips supply, really. Just a silky sound to it. Again, it's hard to describe sounds, isn't it? But so mellow and beautiful. I think on the 30s it was the highest quality baby grand, really. There's the Steinway Model S, which is a longer piano, but I think this is generally, it's more common anyway, not common enough. And we French polished it as well, so it's a beautiful instrument too, beautiful veneer. So I hope that's helpful. Thank you very much for listening.